Many years ago, before the stigma began and before the compound started to call her the woman with the strange boy, Naomi Obilade was just a beautiful young woman with dreams of a good life and a heart that was too soft for the life waiting for her. She grew up in Ibadan as the second daughter of a carpenter and a yam seller. As a child, she spent most of her afternoons helping her mother peel yams at the small market stall and listening to the women laugh loudly as they sold both gossip and sweet roasted plantain. Naomi's mother often said a good woman should master how to use both hands, one for love and one for survival. And Naomi carried those words like a manual for her life. At 19 years, her path crossed with Bamidele, a young man who came from Lagos to visit his cousin in Ibadan. He was calm and had a way of talking about Lagos that made it sound like the land in her dreams that stretched endlessly beneath the bridges. One evening, as they stood near the old mango tree along her street, he told her, "I swear, Naomi, Lagos is different. There are lights that never go out, roads that never sleep, and people everywhere running after big dreams. It is a place where you can start with nothing and still make something out of yourself." Naomi smiled shyly. "And you think a small girl like me can fit into a big place like that?" Bamidele grinned. "Not just fit, Naomi. You will shine there. Come with me. We will build a life together." Her friends warned her not to rush, but she was young and naive. His words were sweet, and sometimes love doesn't wait for logic. So she accepted to marry him, and they got married in a small ceremony, after which Naomi followed him to Lagos with a small box of clothes, her mother's blessings, and a heart full of hope. At first, Lagos overwhelmed her. She was not used to the endless noise of danfos honking at dawn, the shouting traders pulling customers by the sleeve, and the smell of fried fish mixing with exhaust fumes. But she told herself she would adjust and build a life here. They stayed in a small one-room apartment in Makoko. Even though it was beneath what she planned for herself, she managed because she believed this was only the beginning. The following year, when she discovered she was pregnant, she thought it was the answer to all her prayers. Bamidele embraced her that night and promised, "I will work harder, Naomi. We will give our child everything." However, life didn't go as planned. From the very beginning, the pregnancy was hard. Naomi was always tired, always dizzy, and spent the afternoons lying on a mat in the corner of their room while the neighbors gossiped away the day. Bamidele did his best in those early months. He would always buy mangoes for her and peel boiled groundnuts to cheer her. Together, they would dream out loud about a future full of possibility and bliss. And then, one evening in June, after a long day of slow contractions, Jaden was born. He looked peaceful, and Naomi held him against her chest and shed tears of joy. "Jaden, my comfort, my gift," believing that his silence meant peace, not knowing it was the first sign of how different his journey would be. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Jaden fed well, grew steadily, and Naomi adored him fiercely. But as the months passed, she began to notice things the other mothers at the general washing area talked about when they thought she wasn't listening. By his second birthday, Jaden didn't look at her when she called his name. He didn't reach out when she stretched her arms, and strangely, whenever there were loud noises like the grinding of a generator or the sudden bang of a door, the little boy would cover his ears and cry until his tiny chest heaved with exhaustion. Even when other children began saying their first words, Jaden remained silent and would instead retreat into his small world where he spent hours arranging bottle caps in perfectly straight lines, starting over if one was out of place. One afternoon, as Naomi washed clothes at the tap, Madam Fadeke, the loudest woman in the compound, came to stand beside her. Her voice was sweet, but it also tasted of mockery. Naomi, you need to do something about that your son. Oh. Other children of his age are running, talking, and answering their names, but yours, he just sits there staring at the floor. Have you prayed? Are you sure it is not something spiritual? Naomi clenched her jaw, forcing her voice to remain calm. Madam Fadeke, my son is fine. He just learns differently. But Madam Fadeke shook her head and clicked her tongue dramatically. I hope you are right too, because people are watching and people talk. And oh yes, people did talk. They talked at the washing area. They talked at the markets. They talked when Jaden refused to play with their children. They talked when he screamed at sudden noises. They talked when he lined up his toy cars instead of sharing them. And they talked when Naomi passed by with her head high, pretending she didn't hear. At first, Bamidele tried to understand the situation when he noticed the signs of Jaden's difference, but he soon lost his patience and started to heap pressure on Naomi. It began with questions that resembled blame. Naomi, why doesn't Jaden look at me when I call his name? Why does he scream when the generator comes on? Why does he never play with the other children? Naomi, who was tired from sleepless nights, would simply say, he's just different. He will grow into himself. Give him time. But as the months stretched into years, Jaden's silence deepened and Bamidele's patience expired. The pressure from his family made it worse. His mother came from Ibadan one weekend and pulled him aside. This child is not ordinary. Better take him for cleansing before it is too late. As a result, Bamidele started staying out later and taking extra shifts driving a private staff bus, claiming he was trying to make more money. But Naomi knew better. And then one evening, when Jaden was 4 years old, Naomi came home from the market to find Bamidele sitting on the wooden stool with his bag packed. I can't do this anymore, he said as he avoided her eyes. Naomi's chest went cold. Can't do what? This, he gestured vaguely at the room. This life, it's too heavy. Tears filled Naomi's eyes as she stepped closer. We made this life together, Bamidele. You said we would carry it together. But he shook his head. You don't understand. My friends are buying cars, building houses, while I work like a slave, and still we have nothing. And Jaden, Naomi, this boy, he trailed off. Her tears came hotter and faster. But Jaden is your son. Bamidele rubbed his face and nodded. I know, and that is why I am leaving before I become a worse man. Unfortunately, 2 weeks later, he was gone. Just like that, without dropping a hint of where he went to. After Bamidele left, the compound people who were hungry for gossip saw a fresh meal, and Madam Fadeke, the compound gossip, was the first to devour it. You see, Naomi, her husband ran away because the child is strange. If she was wise, she would have taken the boy to a prophet before things got worse. Even when Naomi goes to fetch water at the borehole, the women would lower their voices and sneer at her. Single mother with a strange child. Lagos will finish her. However, Naomi ignored them all and focused on raising her child now, since she was all alone, and by the time Jaden turned 7, she had saved enough to enroll him in Hopefield Primary School, believing that maybe a structured environment would help him connect with other children. On his first day of school, she ironed his uniform carefully, polished his shoes, and packed his lunchbox with extra biscuits. As they walked down the street, she told him, Jaden, remember you have friends there. You can sit with them during breaks, okay? But Jaden didn't reply. He just fixed his eyes on the ground and clutched his lunchbox tightly. Naomi tried to swallow the lump in her throat and said a silent prayer for him as they approached the gates. The first few weeks were hard but manageable. Jaden sat alone under the tree during break, quietly arranging sticks into patterns while other children played football noisily. He barely spoke in class, but he did his work neatly when left undisturbed, and Naomi was hopeful that maybe things would settle. But hope can be fragile because one hot Tuesday afternoon, during handwriting practice, the boy sitting behind Jaden snatched his new pencil and waved it above his head, laughing loudly. "Look at the mute goats," the boy mocked. "Say something now, or can't you talk?" In that moment, the sound, the hands grabbing his things and the noise swelling around him was too much for him to process. Jaden's chest tightened, his breathing increased, and before anyone could stop him, he pushed the boy so hard that he fell against the desk and burst into tears. The classroom froze and then chaos erupted. "Teacher!" Jaden pushed him, one child shouted. Teacher Bola rushed over and pulled the crying boy to his feet. "Jaden, what is wrong with you? Why can't you behave like the other children?" But Jaden didn't move. He sat on the bench, covering his ears with both hands and rocking back and forth while tears flowed down his face. That evening, Naomi was summoned to the school. She sat in the staff room nervously as Teacher Bola expressed her frustration. "Madam Naomi, this cannot continue. Your son doesn't talk, he doesn't play, and now he is hurting other children. We have 30 pupils here. I cannot manage one child who needs special attention. You need to get him assessed, or better still, take him to a school for children like him." Naomi's voice trembled as she tried to explain. "He doesn't mean harm. Teacher, please. He just gets overwhelmed. Give him time, please. He's trying." Teacher Bola shook her head. "Time is not the problem. You need to take responsibility. If other parents complain, I may have no choice but to ask you to withdraw him." Naomi walked home slowly that evening, holding Jaden's hand tightly and trying to fight back her tears. As they entered the compound, she heard voices from the washing area where a group of women stood. "Did you hear?" one of them said loudly. "Naomi's boy attacked somebody in school today." Another voice followed. "I said it before now. That child is not normal." Madam Fadeke's laughter rose above the rest. "I warned her to take him for deliverance. Now see, the whole school will soon chase them away." Naomi paused for a moment and tightened her grip on Jaden's small hand. She wanted to scream, to defend him, and to tell them that he was not broken. But instead, she walked past silently because she knew they would never understand. That night, inside their small room, Jaden sat on the mat lining up his bottle tops one by one. Naomi watched him quietly and her heart ached as the tears she had been suppressing slid down her face. She whispered to herself, "I will fight for you, Jaden. I promise." But what she didn't know was that the fight was only just beginning. 2 days after the incident at school, Naomi sat on her wooden stool inside her shop, working on a fabric spread across her table. The entire compound now knew about Jaden pushing the schoolboy, and even though nobody said it to her face, she could hear the talks whenever she walked past. That evening, after closing the shop, Naomi stood outside waiting to enjoy the cool evening breeze before going inside. It was then that she noticed a tall figure leaning against the broken street light by the gate. She stiffened instinctively and held her back closer. Then the figure stepped forward slowly and raised his hand politely. "Good evening, ma'am," he greeted. "You don't know me, but I know you. I am Chibueze, Papa Chinyere's son. I just came back from Port Harcourt." Naomi nodded slowly, trying to remember the landlord's son she had heard about but barely seen over the years. "Good evening, welcome back." Chibueze hesitated before speaking again. "I have been hearing things about Jaden and about the school." Naomi's shoulders tensed immediately and her voice became sharp without her intending it to. "You've heard plenty, I'm sure. Everyone has. Well, if you came to add your own opinion, please." But he raised a hand calmly. "No, ma'am, I'm not like that. I wanted to talk to you because I understand more than they do." She frowned. "Understand what exactly?" "My sister in Port Harcourt. She was like Jaden. She wouldn't talk, wouldn't play, and couldn't stand loud places. People called her all sort of names too. My parents thought something was wrong, but it wasn't. We took her to a center, a therapy program, and slowly she began to change. Naomi's heart pounded. Therapy? He nodded. Yes, I know one in Surulere. A local NGO runs it. They offer free sessions once a week. They work with children like Jaden. It helped my sister so much. That's why I wanted to tell you. There is nothing cursed about your son, Ma. He just sees the world differently. For the first time in so many years, Naomi felt something like a tiny bit of hope in her chest. She swallowed hard and lowered her voice. Do you think they can help him? Chibueze smiled. It won't be fast and it won't be easy, but yes, it can make a difference. That night, as Naomi slept beside Jaden, she dreamt of a future where her son would be understood and where he wouldn't be mocked for being different. The next morning, she told Safiatu, her closest friend, about Chibueze's suggestion. Safiatu's eyes widened. Therapy? Naomi, do you trust this man? Do you know what people will say if they hear you are carrying Jaden to strange places? Naomi sighed heavily. I don't care what they say, Safi. I have tried everything else. I have prayed. I have fasted. I have cried until I have no tears left. If there is a chance this will help him, I will take it. And so, a week later, Naomi dressed Jaden and took 2 buses across the city to Surulere. Dr. Adebayo, the therapist, greeted them and crouched to Jaden's eye level, smiling. Hello, Jaden. Jaden glanced at him briefly, then he focused back on the bottle top in his hand, and Naomi's chest clenched, but the doctor only smiled more. It's okay, he said kindly, and turned to Naomi. We don't force words, we build trust first. For the next hour, Naomi watched as the doctor used pictures, toys and soft sounds to engage Jaden gently. To her surprise, Jaden's shoulders relaxed and he slightly reached for a toy car after only 15 minutes. After the session, Dr. Adebayo sat with Naomi and explained, your son has autism, Naomi. That is why he struggles with noise, touch and change. It's not a curse and it is not also your fault. With time, patience and therapy, he can learn ways to manage the world around him. Naomi's hands trembled as she held her bag tightly. Her throat was thick with tears, but she was grateful that after all these years, she finally had a name to her son's condition. Naomi wanted to keep the therapy private, but in Makoko, secrets travel faster than network signal. One afternoon, as she returned from the center holding Jaden's hand, she noticed Madam Fadeke standing near the washing area with 3 other women, talking loud enough for her to hear. Do you know where Naomi goes every week? Madam Fadeke asked loudly, pretending to lower her voice. Somebody saw her entering one strange place in Surulere. People say they are doing things there, like rituals. I am sure that is why the boy is like that. The women gasped in unison and shook their heads dramatically. One muttered, she should fear God though. Naomi walked past them without a word, but by evening, the entire compound was sizzling with rumors. Some believed she was taking Jaden to juju people. Others said she had joined a cult to fix her son. That night, Safiatu came running into Naomi's shop breathless. They are talking about you, Naomi. They want to call a meeting. The next day, Naomi returned from work to find a crowd waiting at the compound. Madam Fadeke stood at the center like a queen addressing her subjects. Naomi, we have watched you and we have kept quiet, but now we cannot. You are taking that boy to strange places. Do you want to bring evil into this compound? Do you want other people's children to be affected too? Naomi's voice shook as she stepped forward, but she forced herself to look into Madam Fadeke's eyes. I am taking my son for help. There is nothing evil in that. He has a condition and he needs therapy. The crowd murmured in confusion. Some asked, therapy? While others frowned, uninterested in explanations they didn't understand. Well, Madam Fadeke's voice rose above theirs. She accused Naomi. We warned you before, but you refused to listen. Now, that boy has attacked a classmate and tomorrow he will attack more children here. If you don't stop this nonsense, we'll go to the landlord. Naomi clenched her fist. Jaden is not dangerous, and I will not stop fighting for him. If you don't understand that, please leave us alone. Unfortunately, her words only fueled the gossip further. The compound became cruel. Neighbors stopped greeting her. Children were told not to walk near Jaden, and one night, she even heard voices outside her door arguing about whether she and her son should even remain in the compound. And then, one evening, her landlord came to the door holding a folded paper. He avoided her eyes. Naomi, I am sorry, but some tenants are threatening to leave. I think you should start looking for another place. The quit notice came like a stone in her hands. That night, Naomi sat in the dark room and cried bitterly, holding her chest as if it would fall apart. The week after the quit notice felt like she was living inside a storm. Naomi worked at her shop every day, but every evening when she returned to the compound, she could still feel the judgmental stares inside their small room. Naomi tried to stay strong for her son, even though her spirit was thinning out every day. And then, one evening, she heard a knock on her door. When she opened it, she saw Chibueze standing there holding a small paper bag of bread and 2 bottles of water. You didn't open your shop today, Chibueze asked. Naomi shook her head. I wasn't feeling strong. He stepped inside and dropped the bag down on the table. For a moment, they sat in silence. Then Chibueze spoke. Ma'am, don't let them break you. People fear what they don't understand. It is not Jaden's fault and it is not yours. Naomi shook her head and stared at the floor. They want us out, Chibueze. They think I am doing something evil in Surulere. And maybe I was foolish to believe I could fight everyone at once. I have only 3 weeks to move out. I don't even know where we will go. Chibueze leaned forward. You are not foolish. You are a mother fighting for your child. That is what this is, and you are not alone, ma'am. Let me take you to see Dr. Adebayo properly. He can document everything for you, the diagnosis, the therapy, everything. And maybe if we have proof, we can make them see Jaden differently. Naomi hesitated for a long moment before nodding slowly. I will go. 2 days later, Naomi and Chibueze sat together in the therapy center in Surulere while Dr. Adebayo carefully explained Jaden's condition to Naomi. Your son has autism. His brain works differently, and because of that, loud sounds, crowds, and sudden changes can overwhelm him. But he is smart, very smart, and with consistent therapy, he can learn ways to manage the world around him. He can even do better than his peers with the right guidance. I will write you a diagnosis. Naomi blinked rapidly. But they say he is cursed. The doctor shook his head. No, Naomi, he is not cursed and he is not broken. He just experiences the world differently. Naomi pressed a hand to her lips and said, thank you. After the session, Dr. Adebayo took Jaden into the playroom where there were puzzles, colorful blocks, and soft mats, and he showed Naomi how they encouraged children to communicate. As she watched, Jaden reached for a red car, hesitated, and then he looked up at her for the first time that day. His small lips parted, and in a soft, hoarse whisper, he said, Mama. Naomi froze for a second. She wasn't sure she heard right. Her hand flew to her mouth and she crouched down in front of him, trembling. Jaden, what did you just say? He looked at her again and he touched her hand lightly. Mama, he said again in a more clearer tone. Naomi burst into tears and embraced him tightly. For 7 years, she had waited to hear that word, and now that it came, even though it was soft and fragile, it felt like the loudest sound in the world. That night, Naomi returned home lighter, holding the small therapy booklet as if it was a passport into a new future. At that moment, she felt there was a path forward, but unfortunately, Makoko was not done testing her. 3 days later, disaster struck. Naomi returned from therapy with Jaden to find the wooden door of her shop open and the lock broken. Her sewing machine was gone, and so were the stacks of fabric she had saved for customers. Even the small metal box where she kept her emergency savings had vanished. Her chest tightened as her knees wobbled, and she sat on the floor staring blankly at the empty space where her livelihood had been. Around her, curious neighbors gathered. One woman leaned close and told her, "Naomi, they said they saw Madam Fadeke's son carrying a sack out of your shop this afternoon." Naomi's head jerked up sharply. What? Before anyone could stop her, she walked straight to Madam Fadeke's door and knocked hard. The older woman opened the door slowly, pretending to be surprised. Naomi, what is it?" "My shop has been emptied," Naomi said. "They saw your son there. Where is he?" Madam Fadeke folded her arms. "So, because something is missing, it must be my child? Be careful what you accuse people of, Naomi. You're already carrying enough shame. Don't add lies to it." Naomi's voice rose. "You've hated me since the day I came here. You've called my son cursed. You've turned everyone against us. And now this? God is watching you." Madam Fadeke's face hardened. "Leave before you regret opening your mouth in front of me." Naomi turned away as tears poured down her face. She was helpless because she already knew no one would support her. 2 days later, Chibueze knocked on her door early in the morning holding a folder in his hand. "Ma'am, we are going to the Makoko Community Council. I have reported everything. Enough is enough. This afternoon, the matter would be resolved." Naomi hesitated at first, but Chibueze urged her, "You've been quiet for too long. If you remain silent now, they would never stop." And so, that afternoon, they walked together to the hall at the center of the neighborhood where disputes were settled. Inside, the landlord sat at the head of the wooden table, surrounded by 6 council elders, several compound tenants, and curious neighbors who had gathered to watch. As soon as Naomi and her son stepped in, people began murmuring. At the far end, Madam Fadeke sat with her son proudly as if she was sure victory would be hers. The chairman cleared his throat. "Naomi Obilade, you requested this hearing. Speak." Naomi stood slowly and began. "I am a mother, and I have fought every day for my son since the day he was born. He's different. He doesn't learn like other children. He doesn't play like other children. But that doesn't mean he is cursed. He's my child and he is special." The room remained silent. Naomi opened the folder and pulled out the therapy papers, holding them up. "This is proof. My son has autism. It is not witchcraft. It is not evil. And yet, since the day I moved here, we've been treated like dirt. We've been mocked, isolated, and called names. My shop was robbed. My son was almost thrown out of school. I have stayed silent long enough." She turned to face Madam Fadeke. "If you still believe we bring danger to this place, prove it here today. But if you can't, then stop destroying us." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Madam Fadeke, but for the first time, her confidence faltered. Her son shifted uncomfortably, avoiding everyone's gaze. One of the younger women finally spoke from the back. "I saw him that day at Naomi's shop. I saw him carrying a sack." Madam Fadeke's son stammered and tried to deny it. But 2 other neighbors stepped forward to confirm it. The chairman cleared his throat and spoke up. "Naomi's name is cleared. Her shop theft will be investigated, and any stolen items will be returned and damages paid. From today, nobody in this compound will harass her or her son again. Do I make myself clear?" The room mumbled in agreement. Outside, as Naomi went back home with Jaden, people greeted her warmly. Some touched her arm and apologized. A few even smiled at Jaden. That evening, as she sat on the veranda with Jaden watching the Lagos sky, he sat beside her quietly arranging his bottle caps. Then suddenly, he pointed up. "Blue," he whispered. Naomi froze. She turned to him. "What did you say?" He looked at her again and repeated, "Blue." Tears spilled down Naomi's cheeks as she pulled him close and kissed his forehead over and over. The word was small, but it was everything. It was enough proof that her son was finding his foot in his own time and in his own way. Thank you for watching the story. Kindly share your thoughts about the story with me in the comment section. Share the story out with your loved ones and give the story a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you've not done so by now. Until I bring another story your way. Bye!